Hear these words from the prophet Isaiah. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil. If you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places, and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. The wisdom of Scripture. Thanks be to God.
Well, there's always a solution, sometimes more than one, but not until after several clarifying questions. If you need help with an unblooming tree or a shriveling shrub or cucumber beetles or floppy flowers, you can march right up to a booth at a few select locations on the South Shore and simply ask a master gardener. This year you'll find them at the Marshfield and Scituate farmers markets. Yesterday you could have found them at the Randolph and the Scituate and the Weymouth Gardening Club plant sales. And all you had to say was, my dogwood tree did not bloom this year. What happened and what should I do? And that's when the clarifying questions start, sometimes along with multiple instructions. Where is the tree located? How much sun does it get? How long ago was it planted? How's your soil? Have you had it tested? What's at the base of the tree? If mulched, how high up the trunk does the mulch go? Has the tree been pruned? During what season? And then some instructions might follow that. Take a sample of your soil, send it to UMass, and when you get the report back, you may want to amend the soil. If there's mulch at the base of the tree, then make sure it is not above the flare of the trunk. If it is, remove it so that the flare is exposed. Don't prune it during the spring or the summer's growing season, and so on and so on. Now, my own unflowering dogwood tree last spring was due to the drought the summer before. The advice was to give it a year, plenty of water, and then see how it did this spring. Lots of questions, lots of instructions, but I've never heard anybody suggest that you say a prayer. And that's probably because the science behind gardening and agriculture is old and immense and pretty solid and expanding constantly. The right combination of the basics of soil and seed and compost and water and light and pest practices and deadheading and pruning usually result in success. We can even take some plants now. You know this. Put them together. We can't do it, but somebody does it. Puts it together, comes up with brand new breeds of varieties. The praying comes in for the factors over which we have no control, like the rain and the sunlight. Too much of one without the other, as you know, makes our gardens and fields sag in terrible trouble. Although we have learned over the past several decades that our human activity can and does influence the weather, and therefore the plants, and therefore the insects, and therefore the birds, and therefore the animals, and therefore us. Climate change activists are going hoarse, trying to tell us to stop what we're doing and to turn around in a different direction. But we all know that, right? We're all environmental ministers, right? And each one of our churches has taken the Green Congregation Challenge, right? I know. You haven't yet, but you will. You will, I know it. So as growers, we may not be able to control the weather, but we certainly have influenced it. Gardening is an excellent example of humans partnering with God to produce God's abundance. It's not all in our putting down enough manure, and it's not all based in a heavenly miracle. It's both. And so here we are today, gathered together in the midst of a gorgeous spring, celebrating that holy partnership during the season of joy, these 50 days of Eastertide, the season of planting and new growth and renewed hope. And at the same time, we are emerging from a 2-year disastrous pandemic, which has had serious impact on all of our churches. And we're beginning to wonder where all those people are who still haven't shown up since we began in-person worship. And we're wondering about our investments in technology when our budgets are now being reduced. And everyone is sick of Zoom, present company excluded, of course, here today. We're worried about the future of the Sunday school wing and the fellowship hall. And we are thinking, maybe even out loud, what are we going to do next? Luckily, we don't need a booth in a select location to approach the master gardener, the one whose landscape credentials include the design of Eden, the one who is always ready to grant the fig tree one more year of fertilizer, the one whom we can call upon, as we heard Doug read, call upon and cry for help, and who will answer, "Here I am." And just like a master gardener, maybe just follow that response with a few clarifying questions. We just heard them. Have you removed the yoke among you? The pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil. Have you offered your food to the hungry and satisfied the needs of the afflicted? Then, Scripture says, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong, and you shall be like a watered garden, water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. My dear friends of the Pilgrim Association of the Southern New England Conference of the United Church of Christ, it may be that we will be combining existing churches to breed new varieties. We're already doing it in Lakeville. But just like the basics we can control, like soil and seed, we all need to stick to the controllable basics of service in our communities and visiting the sick and celebrating the sacraments and adding our needed voices to the many justice movements, climate change included. And just as we look up to the heavens and call upon our God for rain, we can call upon our God for the waters that never fail. Grace and guidance and love to move us all forward with purpose and hope. If we provide the manure, the miracle cannot be far behind. Oh, and my dogwood, I did exactly as instructed. It flowered abundantly this spring, and I also said a prayer. Amen. Amen.